Welcome to the Full Moon Film Buff, episode 178. We're going to talk about Never Cry Werewolf from 2008. I rented this from Scarecrow Video and I had not seen this before. As always, we start with the prominent crew and cast. You can find links to a more complete credit list in the show notes. The film was directed by Brenton Spencer, written by John Shepard. The effects makeup designer was Graham Chivers, Jason Dethridge, and Paul Jones. Brenton Spencer is a director and cinematographer. His TV credits include Earth, Final Conflict, Andromeda, 21 Jump Street, Poltergeist: The Legacy, Sanctuary, Stargate Atlantis, and The Flash. As a cinematographer, his work on notable films includes First Blood and Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. His directorial film credits include Blown Away, The Club, and Paradox. John Shepard began his career in the early 80s with horror and genre films, including American Nightmare and Mania: The Intruder. He then worked extensively in television, writing for popular series, including MacGyver and RoboCop the series. Graham Chivers is a special effects makeup artist and sculptor known for films including Pacific Rim, Crimson Peak, Suicide Squad, In the Shadow of the Moon, Resident Evil Afterlife and Retribution, and Hobo with a Shotgun. He worked on major television series such as Defiance, The Strain, The Handmaid's Tale, The Umbrella Academy, and The Boys. We'll see his work again soon when we get to Werewolves, The Dark Survivors, which was also released in 2009. Jason Dethridge's notable credits include Pacific Rim, The Mortal Instruments, City of Bones, Crimson Peak, The Shape of Water, and Resident Evil Afterlife. Dethridge worked on a diverse range of genre films, including Thanksgiving and Cottage Country. His TV work includes contributions to a series we'll get to, Hemlock Grove, as well as The Strain and See. He served as a makeup artist tech on Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. We first covered Paul Jones when we discussed Ginger Snaps. We've also seen his work in Ginger Snaps 2 Unleashed, Wolf Girl, and Underworld Evolution. The cast includes Nina Dobrev as Lauren, Kevin Sorbo as Red Tucker, Peter Stebbings as Jared, Spencer Van Wyck as Kyle, and Irek Mukowski as the werewolf, billed as Irek Mukowski. Nina Dobrev had a few minor film roles in this starring role before landing her breakout role as Mia Jones in the teen drama series Degrassi: The Next Generation. Dobrev rose to higher prominence playing the dual roles of Elena Gilbert and Catherine Pierce in The Vampire Diaries, which I'll probably cover in a single TV Buff episode. She left the series after 6 seasons, returning for the series finale in 2017. Her film work includes The Perks of Being a Wallflower, Let's Be Cops, The Final Girls, and Flatliners. Her biggest commercial success came with XXX: Return of Xander Cage, which grossed $346 million worldwide. Kevin Sorbo initially supported himself through international modeling work. Sorbo appeared in over 150 commercials during the late 80s and early 90s. In 1993, he lost out to Dean Cain as Superman in the TV series Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman, and David Duchovny as Fox Mulder in The X-Files. He landed guest roles on various TV shows before his career-defining breakthrough came in 1995 when he was cast as the title character in Hercules: The Legendary Journeys. The series was a massive international hit, running 6 seasons and making Sorbo a household name. In 1997, he had his first film lead role in Cole the Conqueror. That same year, Sorbo suffered 3 strokes and a shoulder aneurysm, which caused temporary paralysis and vision impairment. He kept his condition private while recovering and managed to continue working on the show. He detailed this challenging period in his 2011 autobiography, True Strength. Following Hercules, Sorbo transitioned to another science fiction series, Andromeda, playing Captain Dylan Hunt. The show, based on unused material by Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry, ran for 5 seasons. Since then, Sorbo has worked primarily in independent films, becoming prominent in faith-based cinema with roles in films like God's Not Dead and Let There Be Light. Peter Stebbings began acting in the early 90s. Stebbings gained recognition for his TV work, including notable roles in series such as Madison and Jeremiah, a post-apocalyptic drama produced by J. Michael Straczynski. Beyond acting, Stebbins expanded his career into directing and writing. He made his feature film directorial debut with Defender, a dark comedy drama starring Woody Harrelson as a mentally ill man who believes he's a superhero, which sounds very much like a film I want to track down and watch. Spencer Van Wyck's most notable role was on the teen drama series Degrassi: The Next Generation. I found some information indicating Irek Mukowski is a movie stunt actor and ballet dancer, but I couldn't find confirmation of anything other than 2 movie roles. This is not the highest quality werewolf movie we've seen. The effects are clearly on a budget. However, it's got atmosphere to spare and the actors have good chemistry. It falls just on the good side of a positive recommendation. If you're a fan of creature features and go in with appropriate expectations, this is a decent enough way to spend 90 minutes. It's Rear Window meets Fright Night, but with werewolves and a made-for-TV budget. It gives off strong Buffy the Vampire Slayer energy with its teenage girl monster hunter. It's competently executed, but nothing groundbreaking. Nina Dobrev shows the charisma that would later make her a star on The Vampire Diaries, and Kevin Sorbo seems to be having a lot of fun. Not essential viewing, but if you're doing a werewolf movie marathon, you could do worse. I know, I have seen way worse. Never Cry Werewolf was part of the Sci-Fi Channel's steady output of original creature features in the late 2000s. This was the network's bread and butter at the time, modestly budgeted horror films filling weekend programming slots and attracting the core genre audience. Kevin Sorbo, famous for Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, was well into his post-Hercules career of genre TV movies and direct-to-video films. Director Brenton Spencer was a veteran of Canadian television production, and that TV experience shows. The film is professionally made within its limitations, with efficient pacing and no wasted scenes. So let's cover the synopsis. Lauren Hansett is a high school student living with her mother and brother on the distressed end of town. We know this is a werewolf movie when one kills their next-door neighbor. The mysterious new neighbor, Jared Martin, moves in next door. He's charming, wealthy, and he seems perfect. He's cool enough to drive a Harley Davidson. He also has hairy palms. All the single ladies in the neighborhood flock around him. And he's immediately drawn to Lauren, who looks like a woman's photo he carries in an antique pocket watch. Lauren spies on him with the aid of a telescope. Lauren becomes suspicious when she notices strange behavior. He's never around during the day. He's afraid of fire, and her dog is terrified of him. His black dog is creepy. She hears a woman's screams from his house, and she spots what looks like blood in his house. Most tellingly, his eyes glow in the dark. Lauren investigates and becomes convinced that Jared is a werewolf. She gathers up the folklore. Calling it an anonymous tip to the police doesn't help any. He uses his psychic powers to begin seducing her. He also kills her best friend, Angie. The cops think that she's paranoid. Stephen, a high school boy with a crush on Lauren, offers to help. He mostly just wants to hang out with her. Unable to buy a gun because, well, she's underage and broke, she settles for a crossbow. At the gun store, Jared's demon dog attacks Stephen. Local access cable host of a hunting TV show, Red Tucker, shoots the dog. All that does is make the dog shed its skin and reveal its demonic nature. Lauren blasts it with a shotgun loaded with silver key rings. In the chaos, Jared intentionally scratches Stephen. Back at her place, Stephen is already showing signs of turning into a werewolf. They've only got until midnight to kill Jared and save Stephen. Stephen manages to lock himself in the bathroom to spare Lauren. Jared comes after Lauren, who slips out of his clutches. She seeks out Red for help. Unfortunately, in reality, he's just a cowardly out-of-work actor. Lauren uses her mom's silverware to create impromptu silver-tipped ammo for the crossbow. Meanwhile, Jared has kidnapped Lauren's little brother Kyle, setting up the final confrontation. Red finds some courage and joins her for the hunt. The confrontation goes poorly, as Jared has anticipated their every attack, and they face him on his turf. Jared captures Lauren, and Stephen runs Red up a tree. Jared scratches Lauren to turn her into a werewolf and make her his mate. Little bro Kyle manages to escape and stabs Jared in the back. Stephen faces Jared, and Red takes a shot, giving Lauren time to grab her crossbow. In the end, a team effort kills Jared one stroke before midnight, freeing them all from the curse. The good guys win. The transformation sequences in Never Cry Werewolf are brief and clearly budget conscious, which is both a limitation and a strategic choice. Rather than attempting elaborate metamorphosis that the budget clearly couldn't support, the film opts for quick cuts, shadowy lighting, and implied transformations happening just off screen or in darkness. What we get is effective and competent. When we see the werewolf form, it's a fairly traditional bipedal creature design, humanoid but lupine, with a wolf-like snout, pointed ears, and fur covering the body. The practical makeup effects on the werewolf's face and claws are much more convincing than the CGI shots of the demon dog, which have all the telltale early 2000 TV movie shimmer and weightlessness. The werewolf design leads more towards a monster man than a full wolf, keeping the creature just humanoid enough to maintain some connection to Jared's human form. Stephen's partial first transformation look was intriguing, like his body doesn't know how to make the full shift yet. It's not going to win any awards for groundbreaking creature effects, but the filmmakers show restraint by keeping the werewolf in motion, in shadows, and in shorter shots where the limitations are less apparent. The film wisely prioritizes atmosphere and tension over showcasing effects that just couldn't compete with theatrical releases. Never Cry Werewolf keeps its lycanthropy mythology fairly straightforward, drawing from traditional werewolf lore and adding one cool original wrinkle. The film establishes that werewolves transform during the full moon, are vulnerable to silver and fire, and possess enhanced strength and predatory instincts. Jared appears to have full control over his condition, though Stephen obviously does not. The film mostly presents lycanthropy as a curse or infection, although it hints at the historical idea of a belt or talisman triggering the transformation without the need for a full moon, based on the skin taken from the neck of the criminal. That was a neat new touch that I wish they had done a little more with. The film doesn't spend any time on the origin story. The werewolves retain human intelligence even in wolf form, as Jared hunts strategically rather than randomly and communicates telepathically with Lauren. Stephen also stands up to Jared. The film doesn't reinvent the werewolf wheel. No unique twists on transformation triggers or novel vulnerabilities, but it doesn't need to. It uses the familiar mythology effectively, trusting the audience knows the basics, focusing instead on the thriller elements of detecting and stopping a werewolf who's hiding in plain sight. Now, Never Cry Werewolf operates within familiar genre territory. A teenage protagonist suspects that her neighbor harbors a monstrous secret, but its most compelling concern centers on the systematic dismissal of women and girls who attempt to raise alarms about danger. Throughout the narrative, Lauren faces familiar patterns, her concerns reframed as overreactions, her observations dismissed as dramatic, her instincts pathologized as an overactive imagination. Even when she produces actual evidence of Jared's suspicious behavior, adults around her deploy ready-made explanations to preserve their sense of authority and understanding. The werewolf here functions as a metaphor for predatory behavior, concealing itself behind charm and social respectability. Jared embodies this duality perfectly. To adults and authority figures, he presents as trustworthy and normal, while Lauren perceives the threat lurking beneath. When danger disguises itself in respectable packaging, the warnings of those who see through the facade become easier to dismiss. Significantly, this dismissal extends across generational divides. Lauren's little brother Kyle proves equally susceptible to Jared's deception, won over by his coolness, a leather jacket, and a motorcycle. This complicates the film's critique. It's not simply that adults refuse to believe young people, but that Jared is good at this. He tailors his charisma toward different audiences. Adults see a responsible neighbor. Kyle sees a figure worth emulating. Lauren finds herself isolated from authority figures and her own peer group, suggesting that predators maintain cover through social capital as much as through respectability. The title itself invokes the fable of the boy who cried wolf, although with a twist that underscores the film's critique. Where the original tale warns against false alarms eroding credibility, this version explores how preemptive dismissal prevents genuine warnings from being heard. The film complicates this dynamic somewhat. Law enforcement initially treats Lauren's tip seriously, suggesting an institutional willingness to investigate. However, Jared's preparedness, his ability to provide alternative explanations that render evidence innocuous, demonstrate how predators exploit systems meant to protect against them. His responses transform alarming signs into acceptable narratives, precisely because those narratives align with what the authorities want or expect to hear. Yet Lauren doesn't end up isolated. She overcomes and gathers supporters, though the conditions under which belief arrives warrant examination. Stephen believes her, even if his initial motivation stems from romantic interest rather than conviction. Red believes after witnessing the demon dog firsthand, requiring personal experience before he'll accept her warnings. And Kyle only believes after being abducted, requiring personal victimization before he credits his sister's perceptions. This progression reveals the film's critique. The question isn't whether women and girls are believed, but rather what thresholds of evidence, what levels of harm, and what personal stakes must be met before their warnings are taken seriously. Belief arrives, but often too late, after considerable damage, and frequently only when others have direct encounters with the danger that Lauren identified long before. Now I want to move on and talk about the werewolf as a sexual threat. Never Cry Werewolf presents the werewolf as a deliberately constructed figure of sexual menace, tapping into an enduring association in werewolf mythology between lycanthropy and predatory sexuality. Jared Martin transforms from mysterious newcomer into a monster whose threat is fundamentally erotic. The film establishes its sexual framework through a careful selection of victims. Jared doesn't kill randomly or out of hunger. His victims are chosen based on their relationship to sexuality and sexual availability. First, he kills a sexual offender, positioning himself as the dominant sexual predator in the territory. His attacks on the prostitutes continue this pattern, asserting dominance over the sexual landscape of the community. The murder of Angie and her boyfriend while they're making out represents perhaps the most transparent example of Jared's sexual motivation. The couple is engaged in consensual teenage sexuality that Lauren, as the virginal final girl figure, has not yet experienced. Jared eliminates the pair for multiple reasons. He's sexual competition. She's a confidant helping Lauren, and her death isolates Lauren socially and emotionally. Stephen represents a different category. Rather than killing him, Jared scratches and infects him with lycanthropy. Stephen is romantically interested in Lauren, making him a sexual rival. Jared doesn't just defeat his rival, he corrupts him, turning Stephen into the very thing threatening Lauren, rendering him unsuitable as a romantic partner while creating another monster who might harm her. Red Tucker, the local access cable host, stands as the lone exception to this sexual pattern. Red is older, not a sexual threat or competitor, and his immunity from Jared's sexual predation actually reinforces the pattern by highlighting it through contrast. All of Jared's actions orbit around his central objective, claiming Lauren as his mate. Jared carries a photograph of a woman who resembles Lauren in an antique pocket watch, suggesting either reincarnation or that he's been searching for a very specific type across decades or even centuries. This transforms his interest from spontaneous attraction to obsessive, predestined pursuit. Jared's courtship follows a template of predatory grooming. He inserts himself in her life by moving next door, ensuring constant proximity. He presents himself as the idealized romantic figure, charming, mysterious, wealthy, riding a Harley Davidson, embodying a dangerous masculine mystique designed to appeal to teenage fantasies. The film codes Lauren as the virginal protagonist in contrast to the more sexually experienced or available victims. Jared's most insidious weapon is his psychic seduction power. Unlike the physical violence he uses against other victims, his approach to Lauren relies on supernatural manipulation of her will and desire. The psychic seduction metaphorizes the way predatory individuals use psychological manipulation, charm, and emotional coercion to overcome their victims' resistance. Even as Lauren accumulates evidence of his monstrous nature, he works on her subconsciously, making her doubt her perceptions and feel drawn to him despite her fear. By giving Jared psychic powers specifically deployed for seduction, the film acknowledges that the werewolf's threat isn't just physical violence, but the corruption of consent itself. The climax brings Jared's sexual agenda to its logical conclusion. He kidnaps Kyle as leverage, forcing the confrontation on his terms. But his goal isn't to kill Lauren, it's to transform her. He scratches her, intending to turn her into a werewolf and make her his mate. This forced transformation represents the ultimate violation, not just an assault on her body, but an assault on her very identity, removing her humanity and binding her to him through shared monstrosity. The midnight deadline creates urgency while reinforcing the sexual metaphor, the moment when supernatural transformations occur and when fantasy ends and reality intrudes. What saves Lauren is collective resistance. The final battle is a team effort, with Kyle stabbing Jared in the back, Stephen confronting him despite his infection, Red providing covering fire, and Lauren delivering the killing blow with her crossbow, loaded with improvised silver ammunition made from her mother's silverware. The detail about the silverware is particularly resonant. Lauren transforms domestic objects associated with family and home into weapons, reclaiming domestic space and feminine resources. By killing Jared one stroke before midnight, they break the curse and prevent the transformations from becoming permanent. The conclusion affirms that collective resistance can overcome even supernatural, predatory sexuality. So let's talk about that collective resistance. Never Cry Werewolf structures its conflict around an interesting fundamental opposition. The werewolf here operates as a solitary apex predator, while human survival depends upon forming a pack. Jared Martin's supernatural power makes him superior to any single human opponent, but his isolation becomes his fatal weakness. Victory comes not from a lone hero, but from an unlikely pack, a teenage girl, her little brother, an infected friend, and a cowardly television personality, who pool their resources and courage to overcome an enemy that not one of them could face alone. The film establishes Jared as fundamentally solitary. He moves into the neighborhood alone, lives alone, and operates alone. His demon dog is a pet and familiar rather than a partner. This isolation is both a source of power and a critical vulnerability. Operating alone, Jared maintains absolute control and complete secrecy, but isolation blinds him. He understands individual psychology well enough to seduce and manipulate, but he fundamentally misunderstands human social bonds. He sees other people as either prey, obstacles, or tools, and assumes everyone else feels the same. Lauren begins the film in a position of social and economic marginality, living with her mom and brother on the wrong side of the tracks. What transforms her from observer to leader is necessity. Crucially, Lauren doesn't try to face Jared alone. Despite the horror movie convention of the final girl who survives by isolating herself, Lauren actively recruits allies. Her leadership style emerges from working-class resourcefulness. Unable to buy a gun, she settles for a crossbow. Needing silver ammunition, she transforms her mother's silverware into a weapon. Stephen's infection complicates the simple opposition between human and monster. After Jared scratches him, Stephen begins transforming, making him simultaneously a victim, ally, and a potential threat. His decision to lock himself in the bathroom to spare Lauren represents crucial self-sacrifice and trust. Where Jared uses his werewolf nature to dominate and destroy, Stephen fights against his transformation, prioritizing Lauren's safety. When Stephen escapes for the final confrontation, he's already partially transformed, but still fighting on the human side. Stephen serves as living proof that humanity isn't defined by biological purity, but by moral choice. Now, Kyle's kidnapping forces the final confrontation, but Jared miscalculates here. By threatening Kyle, he doesn't weaken Lauren, he makes her desperate and absolutely committed to his destruction. Kyle's escape and spontaneous intervention, stabbing Jared in the back, disrupts Jared's control and creates the opening that allows the others to act. As the host of a local access hunting show, Red Tucker performs masculinity and courage for the camera, but he's actually an out-of-work actor who has never hunted anything dangerous. What makes Red's arc meaningful is that he finds courage only through connection to the group. His decision to join the final confrontation isn't about personal glory. It's about not letting a teenage girl face a monster alone. Red represents the idea that courage isn't the absence of fear or the possession of extreme martial skill. It's the decision to stand with others, despite inadequacy and terror. The film's confrontation deliberately contrasts Jared's individual superiority against the humans' collective action. Jared has anticipated their attacks and chosen the battlefield. He initially defeats them systematically. But the humans' advantages become apparent through coordination. Kyle's unexpected intervention, Stephen's engaging him directly, Red's covering fire diverting his attention, all creating the seconds Lauren needs to line up her shot. The midnight deadline means they cannot afford extended combat or alternative strategies. They must succeed in this moment with the resources and allies that they have, or they'll lose everything. The resolution validates the human pack's approach. Their victory is the result of collective action. Never Cry Werewolf rejects the typical horror movie resolution where a final girl survives by being smarter or purer than her doomed friends. Instead, it embraces survival through solidarity. No one could have succeeded alone, but together they possess everything that they need for victory. Never Cry Werewolf ultimately presents a clear thesis. Supernatural individual power cannot withstand coordinated human resistance. Jared underestimates the power of human bonds. This capacity for pack behavior, for genuine cooperation, mutual sacrifice, and coordinated action is what defines humanity. In the end, it takes a human pack to defeat the werewolf. So, if you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Contribute your thoughts and additional observations in the comments below. Let me know what I missed or what you noticed. Next, I plan on discussing Dark Moon Rising from 2009. Keep your eye on the moon, a silver bullet in the chamber, and we'll see you back next episode.